Let's start with the basics. What is predictive search? And predictive search is when a search engine tries to anticipate what someone might search for based on a lot of different things. And those things usually include their current context, like where are they, what time is it, what day is it, things like that. Historical personal behaviors, what have they done before in this situation, what do they usually do when it's Sunday at 5 o'clock, things like that. Aggregated behavior patterns of other people. What do this person's friends do at this time, or what do these person's friends care about? So other people, big data kinds of stuff. And then active solicitation of information. Do you care about this? Would you like to hear more about this? Is this something that you want to receive information about or that you might search for? So in the context of Google, Google's application that does this is called Google Now. And Google Now pulls from all of those things from the phone and from your other devices, and also scrapes all of the information that they have on all of the different Google platforms that you might or might not participate in or use to run your life. So things like Google Calendar, Gmail, Google Play, Google Hangouts, YouTube, Google+, Google Fit, any of the things that Google creates that you sign in with your Google ID, Google knows that that's you, and they're aggregating that information behind the scenes. Even though you think they're different, to Google they're all the same, and that's you, and they understand that that's who you are, and so they can predict things about you based on that. Understand that this is also happening cross-device. So just because you only have your Gmail on your phone doesn't mean that your computer doesn't know what's happening on your Gmail if you're not using your Gmail on your computer, or vice versa, or if you're only using Google Calendar on your tablet. Still, Google understands that's who you are whenever you're logged into any of your Google properties on any of your devices. They're aggregating that information. And so for Google Now, what they do is they've created these cards, right? So they can predict what you might search for or what you might care about, and they show you the answer to the question before you ask it. And so this can be a lot of different things. It can show flights, it can show weather conditions, alerts, reminders that you've set up, all these different kinds of things so that you don't actually have to look for the information. They just provide it to you without you even having to search. So that's really cool. And when I think of Google cards or knowledge graph, I think of knowledge graph, because I think we look back and knowledge graph was the first kind of predictive card that Google created. And it was before Google Now, but they started showing knowledge graph results where they said, hey, we could show you these 10 blue links, but we think you really just want a little tidbit of information like this. So they put it off in a card to the side, or on a mobile phone, they put it at the top. So to me, that was the beginning of Google Now, or a predictive search, but it was knowledge graph, so we called it something different. Now, when we have the cards, like these ones, that's predicting and giving you tidbits of information without you having to drill down into a website or pull any information out. So this is especially useful for Google because they care about wearables, and they think wearables are the future. And when you have a wearable thing like a watch, or when Google Glass was a thing, Google Glass, or a necklace, or anything that's giving you information, the problem with a wearable is that it doesn't have a keyboard, right? You're not typing into your teeny tiny watch to do a search. So instead of allowing you to type, they're trying to predict what you might search for before you search for it and provide you the answer so you don't have to search for it. In the case where they don't predict it right, and you have to search for it, they're pushing you towards voice search, right? But they know that that's less of a great user experience because then you're looking like a geek talking to your watch. So they try and provide the predictive search experience so you don't have to do that. So Google Now focuses on the predictive cards, but also a little bit on voice search. So the other reason that Google cares a lot about this is more and more we're seeing that searches are going to different places in the context of certain kinds of things like travel and entertainment. So more and more what we're seeing is people are searching iTunes for music, people are searching the App Store for apps, they're searching Netflix for TV episodes and movies, and Hulu and stuff like that for their episodes and movies, and they're going straight to the source rather than going to Google. To Google, that's a lost opportunity because Google wants that search traffic, not only so that they can show you ads, but also so that they can promote their digital content that they own, that they have rights for, because lots of the things that you're searching for in Amazon or in Hulu, Google has that available too. So they want to sell it to you instead of letting you get to those places where you might search for it. So with predictive search, instead of letting you do the search, they just show you the results already, and they say, hey, we know you like the show and it's on tonight, or if you're going to miss it, you can download it here on Google Play, so that you don't go download it on Netflix. So it's double duty. They're getting you with the ads, and then they're showing you the content that they own that they can sell to you. So I have to throw this out because I talked to Dwayne yesterday, and Google now isn't the only player in the game. There's also predictive search coming out of Microsoft on the Windows phones with this Cortana product. I don't love Cortana. I think it's interesting and it's got a lot of personality, but in terms of how much data they have in order to be able to predict things about you, it's a lot less because they have fewer properties. They don't have Google Maps. They don't have all these other things that Google has access to, so they're not as good at aggregating your data and understanding who you are and what you might search for. But it exists and it's out there. So the next thing to talk about is the iPhone. So what you should know about Google Now is it comes standard on all Android phones, so it's part of the Android experience. On iPhone, you can get Google Now. It's in the Google app, but it has to be downloaded, and in general, it's not as good. It sucks the battery life, and it's just less integrated as a whole. So the iPhone has lots of cool things happening. It has Siri, so it has voice search. It has a digital assistant. And it has Spotlight search, which crosses all your different devices, your iDevices, and can pull information. But Google Now does both of those things already. They just didn't give it a separate name. So those exist on Google Now. The thing is, the iPhone stuff, all that they're doing, it's not predictive. It's not trying to anticipate what you want before you want it. You still have to initiate the search. So that's the big difference. So for those of you who are less familiar with it, I'm going to go through some examples of Google Now results in case you haven't seen them. So the first thing to notice is that Google Now focuses a lot, especially initially, on location. They care about where you are because they can get a lot of information to predict things about you based on where you are. So when you get a new Android phone, the first thing that happens is as you walk around, it tries to figure out where you live and where you work. And then it'll have a guess, and it'll say, you seem to be here during the day a lot. Do you work here? Is this your place of work? Or the same thing with home. Is this your home? And you can say yes, and then from then on out, they'll give you information relative to your home or your work. So every time you leave home, they'll tell you how far it is, how far you are from home, how long it'll take you to drive home in traffic, or it'll also ask you what kind of transportation do you prefer, because if you take public transit, it won't tell you the traffic. It'll tell you if there are delays in your public transportation system, or if you have to take alternate routes and things like that. So every time you leave, it's trying to predict that. The other thing it can do is it can tell when you've switched modes of transportation. So let's say you drive somewhere that's not home or work, and you leave your car. They can tell that you've gotten out of your car and you're walking because every time your GPS checks in, you're moving less fast, right? So they're telling which way you're going and how fast you're going by the GPS check-ins. When you get out of your car, they say, oh, she's walking now, and then they'll tell me where I parked, right? So it's very clever. It also looks at more basic things, like where do you live? And when you leave the place where you live, like I live in Denver, and when I leave and go to another city, it already knows that I'm traveling, so it gives me relevant information, not for someone who lives in the city that I'm in, but for someone who's traveling there. So it'll give me restaurant recommendations, travel destinations, photo spots, stuff like that. It'll also understand that this isn't a permanent change, right? That I still live in Denver, so it's giving me weather for both places, because it's saying, we know you're probably going to go home, you probably care about weather where you are and where you live. Other things, Google Now is very interested in audio search. As I mentioned, if you have to search, they want you to be able to do a voice search. So they're collecting lots of voice search information and giving really improved results with voice search. They're also crawling and indexing voice for things like TV episodes. So you can actually do a search, an audio search, when you're watching TV and say, I want to know more about this episode. And in Google Now, you can hit listen to the TV. It'll listen to the TV, then it'll pull up details about this episode. So you can find who's the guest star, what's the history on this episode, what's the next episode, things like that. So that's very clever. Use case, kind of unclear, but interesting that they're doing that. So they're also taking in feeds of all the different TV networks and who's got what on at one time, so that you can use your phone to search what's on TV right now, and it can actually give you a live result of what is on TV or what's about to be on TV, so you don't need TV guides, or you don't have to switch out of what you're currently watching to see the scroll of what's on next. So that's kind of interesting. And they also give you the information. So like I said, knowledge graph, it's kind of a knowledge graphy situation where when you search for a show like Legends of Korra, you get the images, you get a little bit of background information about Legends of Korra, who's the cast, what does IMDb think about it, what does TV.com think about it. But then you notice that below that, you get this option for a reminder. And this hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but I think it's fundamentally like changes search, because what happens when you click the little finger button that says set a reminder is it triggers Google Now, a separate app that's not your browser. So you're in your browser, you trigger Google Now to create a reminder whenever something happens. In this case, whenever there's a new episode of Korra on, my phone is going to make noise and say, "Dee, go watch Legends of Korra, the new episode's on in an hour." So that makes a search, like in a browser, have an action-oriented reminder or trigger. To me, that's a big deal. They also will solicit information about how you choose to consume media. So do you listen to, or do you use Amazon Prime? Do you use Netflix? And then it'll try and figure out if you have a cable subscription, how does that work? We can see that you're in this zip code. Here are the cable providers in that zip code. Which one do you use? So that they can provide recommendations for shows that are on that I can actually watch, instead of providing recommendations for shows that I can't watch because I don't have that carrier or I don't have that subscription. So that's pretty good. And they're also just learning about my purchase behaviors, my habits, things like that. Now remember the notification. Look on the left slide. With my notification on my home screen, it's telling me first I have 3 new emails, second that Law & Order SVU is on in an hour, and that I'm going to want to watch it because it's a new episode. So that's activating the search result. That's really cool to me. The other thing is you can click through on that to find out more about the episode again. And let's say I can't watch it because I'm stuck at a long dinner. It'll give you the option to download it. And so they're advancing a couple different players there, Vudu, Amazon, and who? Google Play. So I can see that it's the same price at Google Play as anyone else. So why wouldn't I download it from Google Play if I could? And they're kind of putting Google Play in the mix, because when you think about downloading an episode, you probably don't think about Google Play. You might think about Netflix or Hulu. They want you to start thinking about Google Play, so they're advancing that in the information about the show. Next, they're doing relationship analysis using Google+. So whenever you're logged into your phone and you download an episode or you set a reminder, they know that, and they can aggregate all that information and say, hey, all of these people who watch Law & Order SVU also seem to watch Chicago PD. So to the people who are not downloading and watching or setting reminders for Chicago PD, maybe we'll recommend it to them. So they send in Google Now a recommendation of related TV options and say, hey, maybe you want to watch this too. Lots of people who like Law & Order like Chicago PD. And you can actually drill down in Google Play and see those relationships, and they'll even look in your circle, hey, the people in your circles who are liking and watching Law & Order are also watching this. So it's like kind of a recommendation engine that's automatically being populated in Google Now. The other thing that's happening in Google Now, and this is a bit newer, is a lot of the apps are starting to integrate with Google Now. With deep linking and other kinds of things, you can get notifications if you have an app on your phone. Like let's say you have the Walgreens app, you can get a notification when your prescription is ready, or you can get a Lyft notification when your car is nearby and ready to pick you up, or you can get Airbnb notifications about checking in and checking out. So these apps that are on your phone are now being enabled with Google Now to be more active, more engaged, show up with branded notifications on your Google Now home screen. So you can see these have the branding. They give you lots of different information. It'll tell you, like the eBay one in the middle says, hey, your auction's up in about an hour. Don't forget. And so it's activating the behavior that you've proved that you care about. Things like the Lyft one in the upper right, get home for $8. They're geolocating you and saying, okay, if you were to hire a Lyft car, which is like a competitor to Uber, it would take $8 to get you from here to home, because they already know where your home is, and they know where you are. Okay. So the other thing, so they're getting all of these things from the apps, from your website, from your behavior. They're also crawling email. And so if you're a marketer and you want to get into Google Now, one of the easiest ways to do it is to add schema markup in the HTML of the emails that you're sending out, because Google Now is crawling and looking for that. So in Webmaster Tools, this screen has been around for a long time. It's next to the web structured data markup, and you can validate your email structured data markup, and you can do it for a lot of things. They focus a lot on travel reservations here, so hotels, cars, buses, flights, things like that. They also let you mark up orders and shipping information if you've ordered a product. So if I ordered something from Ann Taylor or something like that, if they've marked up my order confirmation and my shipping confirmation, my Google Now will pull that in and say, hey, we know that your stuff shipped yesterday, or your stuff just shipped. So that allows those merchants to engage much better using Google Now, but just by marking up the emails that they're sending, that they're already sending, right? It's just it's an easy switch. There's another tool in Google Developers that allows you to do something quite similar, checking and validating the email markup. So you have two options. And that's kind of what this looks like. So you can do tickets, events, travel stuff, shipping, stuff like that. And so what happens is, this is like if I bought a ticket online to go see Ice Age, then they send a confirmation, and this pops up on my Google Now about an hour or two before the show. And so it says, hey, don't forget your show starts at 6:45, and here, click here if you want to navigate from where you are to get to the theater, because we already know all this information, and then click here if you want to view the email. Then once it shows that you've gotten to the theater, it knows where you are, and so it says, okay, you're at the theater, you don't need that card anymore, now you need the card that has the thing that they can scan to get you actually into the show, the barcode behind it. Okay? So that's what the schema looks like. They give you, Google has lots of detailed implementation instructions on this. All of the schema markup has recommended or has required stuff, and then it has stuff that's recommended for Google Now. If you want to work with Google Now, you have to be doing both. You have to be doing the required stuff and the stuff that they note, like along the bottom, that says recommended for inclusion in Google Now. And the more schema and the more stuff you include, the more likely it is that you're going to get pulled in to a Google Now notification. And this is true for all of them. So they have lots of detailed recommendations for flight booking markup, restaurant reservations, hotel reservations. All of this is available online. We don't need to go through it here, but you can just access this in the developer guidelines and mark up your HTML emails. And if you're curious about how these look, or you want to play around with it, all you have to do, if you have Google Now on your phone, is work with any of these people. These are the ones that are already doing lots of stuff with the Gmail notifications and Google Now. Now, the one catch is, if you're using Outlook that doesn't go through Gmail, it's not going to be read. So this is only getting crawled and included in Google Now results for people who are using Gmail. So that's one of the loopholes, but they're actually on Android phones trying to force people who use Outlook to go through, like to put a loop through Gmail. It's not worked out so far. It's pretty confusing, but they are trying, so I think they'll get there soon. So let's talk now about card-style results. So what we're seeing in mobile results right now, and a little bit on desktop too, is the look of the results is shifting towards cards. We see a lot of different cards being included in mobile search, and then we see, of course, the cards from Google Now. And so what appears to be happening is Google Now is influencing browser search, but also the browser search, we think that they might be testing for inclusion in Google Now. So there's a merging of what's showing up in Google Now versus how is it looking in the browser search. So this is an example of a restaurant search, and this is actually where they're merging the look of maps into the browser. So they tested something in maps, it worked out, now that's the way the search for a restaurant, wherever you are geolocated, looks in the browser as well. So they're merging all the look of these platforms, so it's hard to know which one you're in. So you do a search for restaurant, you get this with an expandable Ajax arrow, lots of star rankings and stuff like that. Looks a little bit different than the map pack. But then you click through and you get a location card. What's interesting about the location card, number one, is that I can favorite this from the browser. So again, that makes it more interactive, more sticky if you're the restaurant. Additionally, they have the menu link at the bottom, because now Google's been going out and scraping restaurants' menus for inclusion in the search results. So you can see that this Vesta Dipping Grill, we have tabs across the top for all the different pages that they have on their website for the menu. And so you don't even have to get to their website to see what's in the menu. You just have to get this this location card. So I think pretty soon we're going to see more and more menu results in Google Now for people who have meetings at a certain restaurant location, or if you've booked a table and that shows up, then you're going to get not only the notification of you have a reservation at this time, at this place, here are the directions, but also here's the menu if you want to look in advance and figure out what you want to eat. Similarly, Google's doing a lot with travel, where they're kind of trying to take over the travel results with their own set of results where they can make money. So with this one, you can see the searches just for a hotel. And we were looking at the Sheraton Denver Downtown Hotel. And see the first circle where it says book a room, that's an ad. And so the stuff below it is all Google sponsored or Google results, where Google is scraped or working with feeds to get the information so that you can book a room directly from the search result without having to get to any kind of aggregator, competitor, anything like that. Google's preventing you from getting there by showing you the price and the button to book it right in the search result. So this is happening in the browser. I think that very easily it could cross over and happen in Google Now soon. Similarly with flights, when you search fly to Dallas or flights to Dallas, it's geolocating where I am in the sponsored result. Notice that's sponsored, and it's google.com/flights. And then I can pick the dates, and it shows me the price comparison. Why would I ever need to go to Kayak if they're doing that there? So again, they're trying to keep the business in their realm rather than letting people get to the result. So interesting. So next, let's talk about indications of where predictive search is going. So connections that may indicate what we're going to see in the future. First off, recognize that a lot of the algorithm updates have been beneficial to Google Now. Things like improved voice search with Hummingbird and improved local results with Pigeon, all great for making Google Now possible. Also, if you're on an Android phone, what you might already realize is that searches that you do from your phone are pre-populated to your desktop and vice versa. So notice on the phone on the right, I searched for Starbucks on Colorado and Yale. On the desktop on the left, I just put an S, and it assumes that I want to go to Starbucks on Colorado and Yale. That's the first example. So they are cross-pollinating your predicted searches across the devices. Similarly, it used to be that when you did a search on your desktop, it was geolocated by your IP address. Not anymore. Now it's geolocated by wherever your phone is. If you're logged in on your phone, Google says we don't really care where your computer is because we know it's probably right next to your phone or very close to it. So they're pre-populating that as well based on your phone location rather than your computer location. There's also a lot of crossover happening between Google Play and YouTube. So for instance, in this example, I downloaded a free episode of Dual Survival, and you can see it's all the green one that's circled, right? I downloaded that, but then when I go on my desktop to YouTube and I look at purchases, it's counting that as a YouTube purchase. So that's confusing, right? Maybe it's a bug. Maybe they don't realize this is happening, but these are two different Google properties that are counting one behavior as the same thing. Similarly, I favorite something on YouTube, but Google Now sends me a recommendation. Since I like to Walk Off the Earth at one time, then this Christmas they send me a notification that says, hey, Walk Off the Earth has a Christmas album, download in Google Play. So they're cross-pollinating all over the place, and they're remembering your behavior. So like if you set up one of those TV reminders like I showed you before, when you search for that anytime in the future, if you've got a reminder, your search result is altered to show that. So it says you've already got a reminder for this show. We're seeing deeper integration with the other apps, like I showed you a long list of apps. We're seeing a lot more with YouTube or with Uber and OpenTable. Those were kind of the pioneers. So when you do a search in Google Maps, you get an Uber quote for how much money it's going to take to pay an Uber cab to get you to that destination. Similarly, the ability to book a table from a search result through OpenTable, that's included in any restaurant location card that works with OpenTable. So lots of just deeper integration. And then the last thing, of course, is like the Internet of Things, integration with offline devices like a Nest thermostat. You can do a search on your Android phone to find out information about the current temperature in your house or to change the current temperature in your house. So that's fun, interesting, scary. Terrifying. Now, this takes it to the next level. Why does Google do this? Why are they putting so much effort into it? And the answer is because it makes them loads of money. So this is an announcement that came out last week about how Google is now going to be using behavioral stuff, like what you do in your apps or what you've done, what kind of apps you've downloaded, to allow PPC marketers to target you behaviorally. So I'm going to read you this quote. It says, for example, if you exercise regularly using an app that measures how far you run, you might see an ad for an app that measures the food that you eat and the calories that you consumed. So within Google Play, they're saying, we know you downloaded an exercise app, so we're going to allow the people who are marketing any other kind of fitnessy app to know or to target you intentionally. So they make way more money, and it helps their advertisers, right? Advertising, that's how they make their money. All right, so summary. Points 1, 2, and 3. Predictive search is based on your behaviors and your interaction with Google and possibly the larger interaction with Google in a big data sort of way. Google now may be testing for regular Google. We see the lines blurring between browser search and Google now. Regular Google is moving towards a lot of card-formatted results that prevents traffic from getting to your website, but you kind of have to engage it anyway. And also with maps. And then they're aggregating your behavior across all the Google properties, all your devices, to improve Google Now, but also to improve their ability to sell ads. The way you optimize it is with feeds, sitemaps, web and email schema, Google Plus for business, because that's where the local comes in, and any kind of geotagging. And really anything that's knowledge graphy is potential to be included in a Google Now result. Finally, if you want to test this, if you want to play with it, get an Android phone. It's always going to be a better result with Google Now on an Android phone. Remember that a regular browser search looks different from a Google Now browser search. Really, this is mostly important if you're a local business. Maps are always given top rankings in a Google Now search and not necessarily in a browser search. And here's my best hack if you're really caring about Google Now and local search. You can, if you're on a phone, you can get a GPS location masker so that you can check where you are based on the phone. Like you can change your location and get Google Now results from that location all just sitting in your living room. You can say, now I want to be in Tulsa, and see what the results look like for all of your different locations that way.